Zoom, as soon as we're all seated, with item 15. And I've been asked by the CEO to draw your attention to this statement. As this evening's meeting has a full agenda, the Council will be seeking to sign off the reports as presented. Should any member wish to propose an amendment, please email the Corporate Services team so that these can be recorded and addressed appropriately. Are we all happy with that? Okay, so we don't.
So, Councillor, happy with the reports as presented?
Thank you. Item 16, adoption of Working Party Group Terms of Reference. Our CEO is going to lead us through this.
Thank you, Chair. According to standing orders, working groups can only be set up or formed once terms of reference have been agreed at full council. This very short report and terms of reference aims to do just that on behalf of members. It details membership, it details some principles, it also gives a timeline for delivery. I'll be very clear to point out the phases of the project here. So 15th of December for the agreement of the terms of reference, fortnightly working group meetings, including calls for evidence from groups and individuals, internal and external to the council, ready for that working group to report back on the 10th of November at next full council. There is then some time for some design work, and then also on the 9th of March an ambition to report to full council setting out a full costed business case. This particular working group will be supported by obviously our corporate colleagues, but also led by Mark Reed as our head of environment. So, full council, over to you.
Councillor Last.
Thank you for producing such a good report in terms of reference, and I would like to say I could find no holes in it when I read through it, and so I would like to, without any further discussion, move that we accept it.
Okay, do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Podger. All those in favour? Thank you. Right. Item 17, budget monitoring report for 25-26, end of June.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome.
Good evening, councillors. This is the normal format, so I won't take you through all the detail of the report. The Finance Committee received a similar report very recently, and at its meeting, the Finance Committee confirmed that it wants to see budget monitoring reports for the whole council, council-wide, not just for those cost centres that come under the Finance Committee. So if that gives you some assurance this evening that the Finance Committee has already looked at this report, then I won't go through this in detail, but happy to take any questions. It is a good news story. We're looking at a large underspend at the end of June, £380,000 as in paragraph 1.3 of the report, which we've just done the July budget monitoring reports for the whole council, which we didn't have time to bring and put on this evening's agenda. But I can tell you that that figure of £380,000 underspend has gone up to £435,000 by the end of July. So we're still moving in the same cost-saving trajectory. But I'm happy to take any questions, councillors.
Questions. Councillor Nettle.
Steve, yep, thank you very much. A very good report. I just want to check, because forgive me, a bit of deja vu in financial reports when we get halfway through the year, we all get excited. Can I just be reassured that national insurance and VAT is being taken care of in the projected underspend? Thank you.
So the national insurance underpayments from previous years that we accounted for last year, that has been accounted for. So that's all done and dusted. The VAT errors in last year have been accounted for. However, there's a VAT anomaly in this year that we found, which is that car park income which should always have been treated as vatable. And even if you get a ticket, it clearly shows that there is VAT, standard rate VAT on a car parking ticket. There'd been an assumption previous to now that Wiltshire Council, who collects that car parking income on our behalf, had accounted for it to HMRC and had deducted the VAT. That is not the case. We've now had confirmation from Wiltshire that they passed the whole gross amount through to us, and they'd been assuming that we accounted for our VAT. The responsibility is ours. It's not Wiltshire Council, so it's not their fault. It's entirely our fault, and it's entirely my responsibility. So we will be making another voluntary disclosure, which is hugely embarrassing, to tell HMRC before they find out for themselves that we have to back pay VAT in relation to car parking income, which last year was about £294,000 in total as a car parking. So a sixth of that, it was roughly about £50,000. So I'll be making a voluntary disclosure to HMRC to say there's £50,000 of VAT for 24-25 that we wish to repay to HMRC. They may wish to go back even further, in which case we'll have to fit in with what they want. At the moment, it looks likely that they'll want to go back up to 4 years is what they're allowed to claim for. They are allowed to go back further than that if they believe that it was done deliberately and maliciously. But I think we've got enough evidence to demonstrate that it wasn't done deliberately at all. So maybe 4 times £50,000, £200,000 is the amount of VAT that we have not paid in the last 4 years on car parking income, which we need to do. And that is not included in those figures, but we'll have more to bring back at the next budget monitoring report, by which point we'll have done our partial exemption end of year calculation, and we'll have a much better picture on VAT generally.
Question from Councillor Last.
As always, Steve, it's an admirable report. But under 5.5, caravan site income, I understand that it is still £90,000 are still not being paid, which should have been paid. The part of that is because of the dilatoriness of the caravan club. But surely, if they are so slow in paying what is due, should not interest be charged at a reasonable rate for their dilatoriness?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I do confirm that the caravan site income in respect of 24-25, so last year's income, which we accrued for, so it's gone through last year's accounts, but the actual physical payment of that income has not been done yet. What usually happens each year is that their year end is February. They usually spend about 3 or 4 months through to June getting their accounts prepared and audited, and then they present the accounts to us and we invoice them accordingly. They have submitted their accounts this year, but for the first time we're going through their accounts with a fine-tooth comb, and at the moment they're not able to answer all of our questions regarding the expenditure that sets off to reduce the amount of profit that they've got, which then our profit share gets calculated on. So I wouldn't say it's a contractual dispute at the moment, but it is very much us asking lots of questions to make sure that the taxpayer is getting the right amount of profit share. And at the moment, we're not getting adequate responses to that. And in the meantime, therefore, we haven't invoiced them. So the delay is caused by us. The question is, can we charge interest on a late payment? And the answer is, I believe we can under the commercial interest legislation. One organisation can impose interest on another if there's no justifiable reason why there's a late payment. However, at the moment, the delay, I think, is caused by us rather than them. But we've had a meeting of senior managers today where it was confirmed that we will take a firm line to get the answers we need from the club, and we will be able to set a hard deadline by which point we'll either invoice them a fuller amount that we believe we're entitled to, or perhaps just invoice them for the interim amount of 90,000. Either way, we'll have a firm date that if interest becomes payable, we can impose it.
Councillor Last, I understand you want to come back on that. Is that correct?
I was going to come back. My thought is, yes, they certainly owe us £90,000, which should have been paid some months ago. So I would like to see an interim invoice be put to them. and to have them a very set date, a very near date, and from there on, we should be charging interest of somewhere between 4 and 6%.
Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions. One for Steve and one for the leader, I guess. I'm talking mainly about the irrecoverable VAT 5.11, 12, etc. My question really is who do we hold accountable for something like this? Because are the administration taking responsibility for themselves? Are we saying that it's officer fault? I'm not trying to lay blame myself. I'm just, as an opposition councillor, my job's to scrutinise things, and I'm perfectly willing to admit that I didn't spot that this was happening, and that's a fault in mine and other opposition councillors scrutinising of budgets. Does the administration take responsibility for not having scrutinised their own budget and not having found this themselves, or are we blaming officers for this having happened? Because it's easy to write off, but £130,000 a year for the future is a lot of money. If we think back to January, I'm not going to preempt the toilet discussion too much, but if we think back to January, we were told it was 100,000 a year to keep both those toilets open, and we decided we couldn't afford it. And this is 130,000 a year, which is effectively just disappearing. And I just calculated that's 340 Salisbury precept payers, all of their precept going towards that 130,000. So my first question is, who's responsible for this? And my second question is, if we look at 7.2, which is where we're talking about the very welcome improvement in the finances, and I quote that last year's result was due to urgent economising, cost-cutting interventions, not expected to be repeated. My question is, if that's possible if it's possible in 1 year, why can't we repeat that in other years and seek to try to reduce the precept for taxpayers rather than looking at it as, let's try to get ourselves to an okay position, let's try and improve it. So what position could we get to where we could actually reduce the precept?
Can I just clarify which question you're referring to, the RFO, and which question to the administration leader?
Having thought about it, I think both of them are to the administration leader, actually.
Steve, would you be prepared to respond to Councillor Rimmer's questions?
The technical answer to who's responsible it's officers and it's officer. It's me, as the name suggests. The responsible finance officer is responsible for the entirety of the finances of the council. I'm not going to make any excuses. That particular problem with irrecoverable VAT, that's regarding the exempt activities and the fact that under tax law, we're not allowed to reclaim VAT on invoices that we pay out that relate to the delivery of an exempt service. So the easy example is a crematorium. So as you've probably seen in the report, all the VAT on invoices that we paid out in order to deliver a crematorium service, all of those invoices to suppliers that had VAT on them, we were claiming back in the same way as we claim that back across the rest of the council. But because we were delivering a VAT exempt service, there's no VAT on our crematorium invoices to funeral directors and customers. We shouldn't have been reclaiming the VAT back on the expenditure side of it. It is significant. It's a significant amount of money, but it's money that we should have not been claiming in the first place. So in essence, it's a delay in coming clean. So in the year in which we were paying those invoices, we should have just been taking the hit ourselves and not claiming it back. We've had to put up our hands years after the event and say, actually, we've been doing this wrong, HMRC. So apart from the interest payment that we've had to pay on how long we've been holding this money, it's not new money, but we should have been aware of it and we should have budgeted for it accordingly. So I wouldn't want to belittle the importance of this error that's been going on for several years, and it's on my watch, so it's my responsibility now. But it's not an extra cost that we would never have had to pay. We've just not known until sort of 4 years after the event, and we've had to pay it all back in one go. So it's not good business, it's not good management, but it's not extra money that shouldn't have been paid anyway. In terms of paragraph 7.2, that probably is a political question, but last year you might remember that the economising and cost cutting, we held vacancies for longer than we would have liked to have done. Services probably did suffer as a result of having vacancies and that vacancy freeze. Certainly the tree surgery budget and the repairs and maintenance budget, which had been under budgeted at budget setting time, and we brought that to your attention. And with your endorsement, senior management team said, well, we'll stick at those budgets, even though we know that they're probably unrealistically low. So in 24-25, we didn't do as much tree surgery as we did. It was based on a priority basis, so we were compliant with our tree policy, but we didn't do all the extra work that we would normally have done, and repairs and maintenance. Some of those pieces of work were delayed into this year, so there's been a backlog. So you wouldn't want to see that happening every single year just to save money, because clearly that does deteriorate services and buildings. I hope that's helpful.
Councillor Charleston, would you like to comment?
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Councillor Rimmer, for the questions. And I do take them in the spirit in which they're intended. I don't take these things as a personal attack or an attack on the administration. They're very fair questions to ask. Certainly not in the business of blaming officers for anything. I do make the point, I suppose, that I'm not an accountant. I don't have a financial background. I don't think that's necessary to be a councillor or to be the leader of the administration or any administration, I suppose. There is a point where, especially with something like this, where I'm not sure how deep of an analysis or a scrutiny we could have provided, we could have looked at to pick up this VAT issue. It sounds like there's a very basic assumption that's being made. There is a very basic assumption that was being made that Wiltshire were dealing with it. They were making the same assumption back at us. It's a fair point, and absolutely one that perhaps should have been picked up. And I think my only sort of response to that in that respect is that I'm very grateful to the officers that we have now who are picking these things up, that we are picking them up now in as timely a manner as we can, so that we can rectify them as quickly as we can. I think Steve beats himself up a bit, saying it's his watch and his responsibility. I think there's a lot of this happens not under his watch, and I think it's under his watch we're picking it up. And I think I hope we can all agree that's a really positive position to be in. I'd rather we're making this disclosure voluntarily rather than HMRC coming knocking at our door. To your second point, and taking into account everything that Steve has just said, that absolutely there were extraordinary cost-cutting measures that we wouldn't necessarily want to be applying every single year. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. There are cost-cutting measures that we can take every single year. But there is a more robust interrogation of some of these figures and some of these budget lines that I think are now much more in place due to this increased reporting. The budget outturn reports that we get at every single committee kind of gives us that opportunity to be a lot more, I suppose, robust in our scrutiny, both as an administration and as an opposition. I think as well, if you consult the medium-term financial plan, last year's medium-term financial plan, which I suppose will be due an update this year, again, you're correct that we are looking at, I think by the end of the last year of this council, we are looking at hopefully a 0% rise. I think I'm right in saying that. That's what's in the medium-term financial plan. We're looking at sort of lowering the precept rise year on year, and that was in the context of last year's extraordinary cost-cutting measures, which I think in our best projections we were expecting a budget outturn of 0, and actually it was much better, we all know, than we could have hoped for. So I think all things considered, I welcome the questions, and I hope that you are encouraged by the budget when it comes and the medium-term financial plan that follows, that shows that we are taking these things on board and hopefully delivering good value to the ratepayers.
Thank you, Sam. And we have another question now from Councillor Victoria Charleston. According to Hasten. No? Okay.
Profuse apologies then, Chair. I think it's Councillor Corbyn then. My apologies.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve, as always, for your good work. Where we procure from Wiltshire Council to carry out a role, obviously the car park thing is before your time because it's been going on for quite some time where they've collected the money. Clearly, there's never been a written pro forma of what their responsibility will be, because if it was written down that you've procured them to do a role, and out of that they will then take the tax or whatever. So I think there's too much reliance on, well, we think you're doing that and we think you're doing that, which isn't your problem, but it's just to make sure that it's better defined. Because I think Wiltshire Council now do the wages, don't they? Yeah, so all of those things matter in making sure that it's well written in the first place, to make sure that you get the best deal and you get everything correct. And I think, unfortunately, we are now at the end of the legacy of finding out we've got this issue. So just make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's at every turn. Thank you.
Councillor Hocking.
Chair, thank you. Poor Steve, you must have gone, oh my God, here's another one. So I'm not beating up on you at all because you found most of this stuff. And if you hadn't, Lord knows where we've been. But there comes a time when we need to be able to draw a line under this and say no more surprises. Yeah, we talked about 300k for parking a year. 20% of that is 64 years, is £250,000. So all of a sudden, here's a surprise £250,000 that's just landed on the doorstep. We have got to, at some point, be able to say, right, that is it. We can't keep coming along with, oh, by the way, found another one, chaps. Here's another £250,000. We are not able to plan our budgets around figures of this size because this isn't the first one. So my plea would be, Steve, you probably need to go and sit in a dark room somewhere with no one for a fortnight and go through absolutely everything else finance related and make sure there is nothing else lurking in the background that's going to come back and bite us. Again, this isn't, without the stuff that you've done, we probably would be sat at home on dole by now. We'd have been bankrupt. But we do need to come to a point where we know where we are with our finances and there are no more surprises. We need to do that soon. Thank you.
Asa.
Just to speak on behalf of officers, Mr. Mayor, I think we're all feeling that. As Councillor Hocking has said, we are we come into work after a weekend, we find out what's gone on over the course of the weekend with the on-call rota. We see what is today's skeleton in the cupboard that's coming out. And Councillor Hocking is right, at some point we can't keep looking backwards and saying, you know, we've been here 15, 16 months now, and it's happened on somebody else's watch. We absolutely appreciate that. I've also been really clear with staff that during the first year of my tenure, everything was about finance, and making sure that we were making sensible decisions as an officer team around finance. The second year is around governance and making sure that all of these issues, we bring them to the forefront, that we talk about them, we get them out on the table. Now, I appreciate that can be hugely problematic politically, but from my perspective, from my senior management team's perspective, most of which are here tonight, it is about being honest, it is about taking responsibility, it is about building things back so that we can have a sound professional council going forward. So it is right for me to apologise that we are still bringing forward issues of concern. We are going to keep bringing forward issues of concern. But where it is appropriate, we absolutely will be taking personal responsibility for those things. And we hope that the honesty that we have, the honesty that we continue to give you, the honesty, the reports, the data, the information, that you can appreciate we are trying our best, but there are many things that we are uncovering that we want to put right. So apologies for just making that statement on behalf of the officer team and the council.
I don't believe you have any further questions, Steve. Thank you very much for your report. And now we move on to a series of items. And I think it's quite pertinent that we've just had that statement from our CEO, because the next range of items are very much to do with ensuring that legislation and our guidance is up to date and robust to enable officers to work more efficiently, more effectively, and ultimately save us some money, because some of these things will save officers time and enable them to, shall we say, function within guidance which is up to date and fit for purpose. And I know a lot of work has gone into producing these papers, so I look forward to hearing these presentations from the officers. And if we can look first of all at item 18, policy, procedures and management policy.
Thank you, Chairman. So the policy and procedure management policy. So we've revised the policy to clarify definitions, responsibilities and the review processes that we use. The main changes are to define policies and procedures more clearly. So we're going to try to streamline our policies so they're shorter, more simple and more easy for officers to understand. Those should provide the information and the goals that the councils are striving to. And then underlining those policies are our procedures that provide the details and the processes about how we're trying to deliver those items. We're also going to use a 3-tier classification system for both our policies and procedures. This will help us know how often to review policies and where it's appropriate to publish them. So this policy and procedure management policy was already taken to the governance committee, as Councillor Dalton mentioned. So we're now bringing it here tonight to full council for your approval, please, and also to agree that myself as head of corporate services will oversee the schedule to review and manage policies going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Dalton.
Chair, thank you. As the officer just said, this did go to, I'm still calling it the Personnel Committee because I can't get used to the new names of everything, but back in July, it was debated, I think, quite well. So unless members, I mean, if you're burning with questions, nobody had any questions of sort of, you know, out of order, should I say, at that meeting. And nobody's contacted me since that meeting, so I'm happy to move the recommendations at 4.1 and 4.2.
Councillor Hock.
Thank you, Chair. I'm all for this. The sooner we have a massive review of policies and procedures, generally the better. And I cite my old favourite, our tree policy. Everybody remember that? 47 pages long. Seriously? The quicker we get down to 47 lines, the better. Thank you.
Councillor Nettle.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly second Councillor Dalton's motion. The one question I wanted to ask, I think I asked it at the time, is where if our IT expert could give us access as us councillors to these policies, because trying to find policies is a little bit of a challenge, and I'm sure I feel like deja vu here because I think I've said this before, but I think certainly if you're a new councillor, it must be even more incredible to find. So I just want to be reassured that once we've got these policies in, us councillors can be able to access them.
Asa.
Happy to reiterate the previous commitment, councillor, that yes, as we go through and we review these and we make them fit for purpose, that we absolutely will make sure that our councillors can have access to them.
And just further to that, I've already discussed options with our in-house IT officer. We do have a council intranet that officers use. So I've already discussed options of having a councillor portal for that, for policies, etc. So we are thinking very much about how we can share information better with you. Thank you.
So we've had a proposer, Councillor Dalton, is that correct? And a second. Can we have a vote on that, please? All in favour? That's passed. Thank you. 19, procurement compliance.
Thank you. So currently, Salisbury City Council are working with Hampshire County Council's Procurement Department to review our procurement policies and procedures. To ensure that Salisbury City Council's policies are compliant with UK procurement legislation, we need to make some amendments to our current policies and procedures. So in tonight's report, I propose to make some amendments to the standing orders, just one section in the standing orders, that's section 18, titled Financial Controls and Procurement. Then also to make an amendment to our financial regulations, section 11, contracts. Then we've created a new procedural document, which is the contract procedure rules. Again, that's the detail, as I mentioned before. And in addition to support those documents, we'd like to increase our tender threshold as a council from £50,000 to £75,000, and also increase our senior management team authorisation limits to £75,000 as well, in line with the tender threshold. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Councillor Dalton.
Chair, thank you. This is another item that came to the Personnel Committee in July. I'm happy to move the recommendations, but with the with ACE's guidance, noting the threshold limit increase to 75,000, is that currently 50?
It's currently 50, yes. So we're proposing a modest increase at the moment. The national limit is actually 179,000. So we're not proposing to raise it, as high as that. However, just I think it mentions it in the report. The value of the tender threshold is for the duration of the contract. So, for example, if the contract that you was going out for tender for was of the value of £15,000 a year, over 5 years, for example, that you would already hit that £75,000 threshold. And some of you may already know, but when you go out to tender, it's a lot lengthier process. It's a much more costly process. So that's why we propose to increase the threshold for those reasons, and then we can review over the next year how often we're hitting that threshold, value for money, etc., and see whether we want to propose to increase it in future years. But at the moment, the proposed contract procedure rules have this limit of 75,000.
Okay, I mean, I'm content with that, because any procurement will go through council anyway, and members will pick that up. And I was a commercial officer, so I know all about the law and how long things take. So happy to move recommendations 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 and 4.4. And again, nobody's contacted me since the July meeting, or in fact even the 10th meeting, to make comments.
We have a few questions here. First of all, Councillor Podger.
I'm happy to second that, but
Okay.
I do want to just ask, is the 75,000 enough? Just bearing in mind that you said it's for the term of the contract, it doesn't seem a very large amount. I'm not suggesting 170 something, but I just wondered how you'd arrived at the 75,000.
I arrived at that figure in consultation with Hampshire, so I discussed it with them, what they suggested. I also discussed it with my SMT colleagues, in particular the RFO, what he felt comfortable raising it by. In all honesty, I think we're going to have to go for this first year. The next steps after this will be to conduct a lot of management training on these processes, and then I'll be reviewing our contracts register with Hampshire, and then we'll be working up a strategy to tackle our contracts over the forthcoming years, looking at contracts that are coming up. So I think once we begin that process, I'll have a much clearer understanding of the value of the contracts that we need to be going out to tender for and how many per year. So I'll be able to sort of inform you with more information in terms of how many we're looking, what the values are, how many they're going to be. So obviously this can be up for review at subsequent committees if you feel we need to.
We would need to, simply because what I wouldn't like to see is the contracts having to go to full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. Are there any further questions before we move to a vote? Okay, can we have a vote on that, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Where are we up to now? Repairs, maintenance and waster contracts.
Good evening, councillors. So please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is probably the first time that an officer has brought one of these requests to council. This is again part of our attempt to be acting in an honest and transparent way and giving councillors as much information as possible. In the past, I believe the clerk or CEO had an unlimited delegated approval limit, which meant reports like this weren't necessary to come to the council. Everybody within the officer team, including the CEO, now has a limit in terms of what he or we can sign off. So anything of this nature, which is obviously a significant commitment for the financial purse, for the public purse from this council, is now going to be brought to councillors to give permission first to spend, and then once we've gone through the procurement process and we've got our preferred contractors, we will then bring that back as final confirmation and to have councillors to sign that off as well. So as well as this, in November, you will have me sat here again, hopefully with our preferred contractor for the repairs and maintenance one. And then sometime in the new financial year, hopefully early in the new financial year, you'll have our preferred contractor for the waste management contract. So just looking at the report summary there, then what we're looking at here is a permission to go out and tender for a repairs and maintenance contract, which is estimated to be worth between 3 and 4.5 million over the term of the contract. That's an initial 3-year contract with 2 years added. So those figures are for the full 5 years that we're looking at. The waste collection and disposal contract is estimated to be worth 1 million to 1.5 million over a potential 5-year period. And again, that comprises of that initial 3-year term with the option to extend for a further 2 years should we be satisfied with the contract that we have in place. At the moment, you may be aware that we've got existing arrangements with D&M Maintenance for our repairs and maintenance contract. And then across our waste contracts, we've got a number of separate sort of arrangements held with various waste service providers, including Hills, Grist, Boswell, CB Skips, and that's not all of them. We've got lots of different arrangements in place. So the procurement process has been designed to enhance contract specifications, so we get more bang for our buck, improve performance management, so those KPIs that we can really interrogate our contractors and hold them to account when they don't fulfil their obligations, and of course achieve better value for the public purse, which is really important for us as well. So we can, especially around the waste contract. We're hoping that by bringing together 4, 5, 6, separate contracts into one, that we will be able to get some value for money from those. In doing this, we have been working very closely with Hampshire County Council's procurement services. They have this expert knowledge in this area that we simply don't have as a parish council, so they've been invaluable to us. We did approach Wiltshire Council, just for those of you that are wondering why we didn't, but they didn't have the capacity to support us in this area at this time. So my request is that you then go to the recommendations, which is to approve the commencement of the procurement for repairs and maintenance contract, approve the commencement of the procurement for the new waste services contract, noting that these new arrangements will replace existing contracts that we have in place with DNN and our various waste providers, and endorsing the approach of refining contract specifications and performing monitoring to improve service delivery and definitely better value for money. That's what we're trying to push for here.
Thank you, Mark. Question from Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Mark. Very important one as well. Just wanted to clarify one thing. On 1.3, does that mean that in the future, if there was a proposal or there was a work to be done, can we scrutinize that this is value for money, or can we ask them that, look, there are other companies who are able to provide us a better service or better quotation? Because at the moment, what I currently understand is whatever they say or whatever the contractor will say, we have to agree. But does that give us a leeway that we can always go out and find out if there is better value for money or not?
Absolutely. So this, the proposal for the repairs and maintenance contract, I think is probably the one that you're referring to here. Within the contract specification, we will be putting in, or we have put in there, a number of things. One is that we retain the right to use an independent QS to verify any figures that come in that we might want to review. The way that we've built the specification as well is made it much more transparent in terms of hourly rates, so that we are internally, our team can review any invoices that come in to make sure that they all look appropriate and where they should be. And then just in terms of your final point there, Councillor, absolutely, we've also built in the specification document that we don't have to stick with this, whoever we put out wins this particular contract, we don't have to use them for every single job. If there are jobs that we would like to use another contractor for, then depending on obviously on the size of the job, we can either go out to tender for it separately, or we can get 3 quotes and follow those internal processes as well. But no, we're not married into one contractor. Of course, the wishes of officers is that we use as few different contractors as possible, because this is a very lengthy process in terms of going out to tender. But no, we are not married to one contractor.
Thank you, Mark. This is music to my ears. It's kind of safeguards council as well in the future.
Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you. I just wanted to express slight concern about the fact that if we look at the amount of money, we're talking 3 to 4.5 million, 1 to 1.5 million. My concern is the extent to which this document, which is obviously now public, existing with those amounts in it, will impact your ability to be able to successfully negotiate with people. Because if you're going out to negotiate something and the people you're negotiating with know you're expecting to spend between 3 and 4.5 million, you're not likely to get many quotes that are close to the 3 million mark. You're likely to get everything. If you say I'm prepared to pay 4.5 million, then that's what you're going to end up paying, probably more than that. So my concern is that obviously it's too late to do anything about it being a public document because it now is one. But I wonder if there's some reassurance could have that won't impact that, because my main concern is point 1.3 about achieving better value for the public person. It just concerns me slightly.
So as part of the procurement process, you have to specify the level of the contract. We've given it a fairly wide scope there in terms of 3 to 4.5 million, because it really does depend on what we've done a projection obviously over the medium-term financial plan of what we expect that we might spend. But of course, there are other pressing matters that will need to be discussed during the budget setting process of this upcoming financial year, in relation to things like the poultry cross, and other items. Obviously, we're talking about maybe the marketplace toilets being refurbished, or something happening. So lots of different things which we haven't budgeted for as yet, which will need to be considered. In terms of scrutiny, so the way that we've built the tender specification, it's very much built on rate cards. So we've given a number of scenarios where we've asked for the companies that will be bidding for this contract to tell us how they, what it would cost to, or if they were to provide the scenarios that we have put forward for them. That looks at things like that, as well as their rates for an electrician, or rates for a plumber, or specialist rates for doing a certain job. We've also built into it things so that we can make sure that we're being fair and proportionate to companies that are based locally to versus companies that maybe are based a little bit further afield. So we've also put in there where they need to tell us about what their overheads costs might be as well. So then it is all very, very transparent. It's very fair. And we did some market engagement before we prepared this specification as well. and the market has come back and said that what we put together is a fair and proportionate specification to be able to bid for in a robust way.
Councillor Podger.
I would like to propose that we accept the procurement proposal for the repairs and maintenance contract and the waste collection and disposal contract.
Second, please. We have a couple more questions. Councillor Nettle.
Thank you. I suppose my question is a bit of a side question. Is the frustration that when you deal with Grist, Hills and others in this city, it depends on the contract that the company has with them and when they collect. And I was disappointed to hear that you couldn't have a conversation with Wiltshire. I just feel that it seems that whichever firm comes into Salisbury, their head office negotiates a contract with one of these companies, and they come and pick up their rubbish or their waste at different times, and that's the perception I have. I mean, I just wondered how we could just reduce the number of collection times across the city, and I know that's not what this paper is trying to do, but that's the frustration I have.
Mark, would you like to respond to that in terms of procurement?
So I think in terms of a wider city approach, then absolutely that's something that we could look to talk to with partners and with Wiltshire Council as well. I'm always open to reducing any traffic flow of large vehicles into the city. I get very frustrated, as do my street scene team, with bags that are left lying around for hours on end. So if there's something that we could do with partners to reduce that and have a smaller window of collections, I think that could only be a positive thing.
Councillor Brown.
Just a quick one. Thank you very much, Mark. And I'm very happy to support these recommendations. I would ask a question that, because procurement process is so important to work of any government at any level, that I think for the edification of us, the councillors, it would be really useful to learn, especially for procurements of this size, which are pretty large, that you talk a lot about the scorecards and the new process. I think to have a session where we learn what the process is, presumably for many other contracts of this size, I think would be an hour input.
Whilst that is in Janine's portfolio of work, she has organised some sessions for managers to attend. I'm sure that it's certainly within the remit that we could organise councillor sessions as well, if that is what councillors around the table would like to have.
Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy generally with the recommendations. I know.
Councillor Dalton, sorry. You're next.
I spoke without opening my mouth, which is Jeremy, I think that's a perennial issue. I think what you've just raised, and the City Council, Wiltshire Council, and past councils have been debating that for years. I've no idea. I've scratched my head over that. You raise a good point, I think. I think probably this paper ought to have been an exempt, because it's mentioning financial figures and companies who are probably going to get financial advantage, should I say. They're currently with us now. They're now seeing a paper before them, and they're thinking, they're probably aware that their contract's coming up anyway.
Absolutely.
So now they're seeing that 3 to 4.5 million. I think it should have been an exempt with a public paper with some of this redacted, to be honest. On 1.11 and 1.12, it mentions in both a 3-year term with the option to extend for an additional 2 years. On the recommendations, it says over 3 years with an option to extend for up to 2 years on both. So are we proposing up to 2 years or additional 2 years? There is a difference.
Apologies, that is my error on the on the paper. It's 3 years with an option to extend for a further 2. So that is my error. Apologies.
Okay, so yeah, as long as members are aware of that, so it's an additional 2 years. I mean, this is a lot of money. Is 3 years a good length of time? Perhaps it should be longer. I don't know, because I haven't seen the background to all this. And potentially extending for additional 2 years. You could do a 2-year option, but split 1 year and 1 year. So if you've got an issue, you could extend it for a year to try and sort yourself out, if that makes sense, and then go into that other year if you need to do that. I know we've got to do this, and I appreciate, Mark, obviously you're right, it's never come here before. My opinion, I've just raised those, I think, and I'll leave it at that.
Chair, if I may, happy to come back. I think Councillor Brown makes an excellent point around training. And whilst Councillor Dalton, you have some experience in larger government departments, yes, there is some interesting legal interpretations to be made around this. It is quite normal for a 3+2 as opposed to a 3+1+1. And actually a 3+2 gives that private organisation much more comfort as opposed to having to retender for years 4 and 5 on a separate basis. So a 3+2 is quite common, but I appreciate that we haven't had the opportunity to train or discuss that at length with councillors. As the clerk, I took a view around open government. Speaking, Councillor Rimmer, to the point that you made earlier, it does not prejudice the competitive tendering of this procurement process. I believe during the last process, there were at least 9 companies that were competitively bidding for this process. There was a delightful spread of prices and costs that were also demonstrated within that process. We have to let you know, as councillors, a ballpark value. And forgive me, there is quite a large range here between 3 million and 4.5. That's a 50% range of what we're talking about here. So we need to give you enough information to make an enabled and empowered decision without giving away information which we believe would prejudice the process that we're going through. And again, this is very new to this organisation to be acting in this way. I absolutely underline the need for training, and we will continue to improve this process. But from our perspective, we believe that everything that we have done today is interpreted to be correct, legal, above board, and a good demonstration for how officers want to make sure that councillors are empowered to make these decisions going forward.
Sorry, can I just come back on one very, very quick point, Asa, what you just said, and I agree with everything you said. On the 311 that I mentioned, I'm looking at that from a member's perspective to the taxpayer rather than the company winning a contract and potentially being there 5 years.
Councillor Rogers.
Apologies for jumping in, Chair. Can I just, I'll say I'm generally happy with the recommendations. This is substantial sums of public money that we're going to spend on particularly on repairs and maintenance. Can I just ask that I know we're being guided by Hampshire Council in this procurement process. Can I just be reassured that we're going to ask all those who tender to have a track record of training for young people, for apprenticeships, so that at least we see our money, our public money, giving opportunities for young people to come through? Thank you.
Yeah, so there is, in the social value section, there is a section in the specification around apprenticeships.
Okay, we have two more questions and I'd like to move to a vote. Councillor Rimmer.
Hi, so I was just coming back momentarily on what the Chief Executive said. I think he is right, and I agree that obviously legally this is how one has to do it. And I think my point was possibly more a criticism of how public sector contracts are negotiated anyway, which is obviously a slightly bigger issue that we can deal with sitting around this table. But I was just going to say that I'd be very interested to see what a previous version of this with a contract we were talking about with a range like that and the tendered quotations that we received, to what extent they were near the upper limit or the lower one. It would just be interesting to see how that ended up last time.
Sorry, just to be clear, when the tenders come in, they're not saying how how close they would be to the £3 or £4.5 million mark. That's just what we're estimating the contract value might be over that 5-year period. What we put together in terms of the specification is much more around what they would charge us for their sort of daily rate for certain tasks and certain trades and certain scenarios, rather than then looking at what we might then use or how that might then be reconciled to those numbers. That they're slightly two separate things.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate that. It'd just be interesting to see to what extent those predictions were accurate on previous occasions, then perhaps there's a better wording of it.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, and I think I almost had my point stolen in that final comment. I think I'm just trying to tie back from the very first, from Councillor Hock all the way through. My understanding, and almost this, just to wrap it up at the end, is the 3 to 4.5 million is a made-up number. It's a made-up number based on our budgeting, based on what we think is going to happen, but there are unknown unknowns, because who knows, and there are known unknowns and all of that. What we're going to be working with them in the contract is for rate cards and similar things. We can and cannot go with them in the future, because that was important if we decide there's a cheaper way of doing it in the future. So I think I just wanted to clarify the 3 and 4.5 million, 1 to 1.5 million is just to give us an idea of the importance of these contracts. And actually, as a council, when we come to budgeting in a few months' time and going forward, we could bring that down if we feel like it. And in a year's time, we can bring it down further, or we could raise it. So if I've got that right before we go to the vote, I think that's it. Those numbers are based purely on what we budget for anyway. The importance of this, but actually what we're saying is, what's your hourly rate? What's your rate card in this
Absolutely, you nailed it. Yeah. So the 3 to 4.5 million, absolutely. It's what officers have looked. We've looked at the medium-term financial plan. We've thought about some of the bigger projects we think are coming down the road that councillors might put some budget towards. As I said, the Poultry Cross is one that's sticking in my mind quite heavily, and it also gives the businesses out there that are tendering for this an idea of how much money or how much business might be coming their way, and that will then, I suppose, interest some businesses, interest others, because whilst this is a large contract for a parish council, if you moved over to Wiltshire Council, this is a very small contract, or a other unitary authority or larger council. So, and there are some businesses that wouldn't even look at this, because it would be termed as a small contract compared to some of the other areas, etc. So, yeah, it gives a flavour of what the contract value would be. The upper limit we've set it 4.5. Now, under procurement rules, so over the course of that 5-year contract, we cannot exceed that amount. I think there's a slight sort of vary. You can go above by about 10% or something, but anything over that, you then have to go back out to tender. So if council makes this year during its budget setting processes, makes huge amounts of money available to my facilities team, which I'm sure they would be delighted with. If it takes us over the 4.5 million in year 1, which again, unlikely, I'm sure, but if it was, then we would have to go out to tender again after year 1.
Thank you, Mark. I think we've given this a really good airing, and I think we have sufficient information to make a decision on this. We've got a proposer, I believe, Councillor Podger, and a seconder, Councillor Hock. All those in favour, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. General power of competence.
So to adopt the general power competence, a parish council must have a qualified clerk with relevant training, such as SILCA, and have at least 2/3 of councillors elected, not co-opted. Recently, the Chief Executive Officer, our clerk, has successfully completed the certificate in local council administration.
Are we moving to a vote already? Excellent.
So, as I mentioned, we need to have those two criteria. We now have those two criteria. If you wondered, the general power competence is allows eligible councils, which we are now, to do anything that individuals generally may do, provided it is not prohibited by other legislation. And also for information, just in terms of knowledge and robustness as well, myself as Head of Corporate Services and Mark as well, Head of Environmental Services, we also do have SILCA. So just to reassure you, that provides a little bit more resilience and knowledge there to support ACER. So recommendations are to formally acknowledge the Chief Executive Officer's achievement, the Council adopts the general power competence, and then we will go on to review any relevant policies and procedures.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we move straight to a vote on that? Anyone prepared to propose it? Propose, Councillor Hock. Sorry, Councillor Dalton.
I did have my hand up, sorry, some time ago. I was emailed, obviously, ACER as the chair of Personnel Committee, whatever it's called now, some time ago on this. Just to say, could I amend 3.1, please? It's not committee, is it? That council congratulates and formally acknowledges. We could change it. So 3.1 amended, 3.2 and 3.3. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, seconding the amendment. Okay. Right. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 22, SIL monies.
So, thank you, Chair. This is another suggestion of setting up for a working group, this time for the working group to meet to discuss community infrastructure levy. It's long been my ambition that councillors take the lead in the spending and the allocation of SIL within this particular council. And this short report sets out, again, some terms of reference and some working principles to be able to define what that should look like. For clarity, this is not the setting up of a committee to decide on SIL projects and allocate money. This is the working group who are going to define the rules of engagement and how that may work going forward. So, councillors, to you.
Any comments? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, I read this with interest. I'm all behind it. I think it's great, a fantastic initiative. My concern, which I talked through with the CEO this afternoon, is that we're going for the normal split politically, which is fine, and it keeps the numbers down to 5, which is good. My anxiety is that that could mean only 2 or 3 wards are represented within that discussion, and my request is, because it gets too complicated to have 8 people, 1 from every ward, my request is that that group, once it's formed, seeks to discuss what they're talking about with other wards that are not represented within the 5. So it doesn't matter which councillor they pick, but just make sure that the initiatives from the other wards are discussed within that working group. Thank you.
Councillor Dalton.
I mean, Chair, yeah, I mean, I agree, but you'll probably find a lot of the SIL monies coming from East Harlem, West Harlem, and Pemberton Heath, I would assume, with all the other wards in between. Completely agree with this. If you've seen the spreadsheet, not from the current council, should I say, but from a council past, and what some of that SIL money was spent on, you'd be mortified.
Councillor Hocking and then Councillor Rick.
Chair, thank you. I'm all for this, that's fine. I do have some concerns about the principles, namely point 5, to acknowledge the challenge between wards earning CIL and those wards of high use by all residents in the city. What my concern there is a grab from other wards within the city for money, for CIL money that has not been allocated to them. If we leave that too open, and I'll take Councillor Dalton's point just now, we're talking about Harnham with the developments, that's where a lot of it is. I would not want to see all the CIL money that's been allocated to Harnham, East and West or whatever, disappearing off to Bemerton or Bishopstown or whatever. I would like to find some way of making sure that it's extremely difficult to move that money out of the wards that they were apportioned to. How do we do that?
So,
Just coming to the point of information.
Point of information, just on the point that Councillor Hocking, that's what the work of the working group will do. I can appreciate after a number of conversations with councillors that this is a very emotive subject, and there are some very different trains of thought, which is entirely appropriate. Why I've said to acknowledge a challenge. I'm not suggesting a model and how that should operate, but that this is something that which is of concern to a number of councillors, and the working group will come back to full council with a recommendation. So full council will have the decision-making ability in terms of what is to be agreed going forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Bill.
I think the CEO has really made the point that I wanted to make about this. Whilst it's true that government guidelines say that the point of CIL is to recompense the community that is having to bear the brunt of these things. We're not at the stage of getting into a bum fight between various wards about who deserves what. If we were, I would obviously be having a loud shout for West Harnham because we've been significantly impacted by development. But this whole purpose of this is just to sort out a mechanism by which we can then invite councillors to make their pitches, for their own ward if they wish. It's not in any way an attempt to apportion this money at this stage. It's a process. So I think we need to save our emotional energy on behalf of our wards for when we're actually starting to allocate money, which is not now.
Okay, Joe, I'm just getting in a preemptive strike. That was all.
I don't blame you, Councillor Hocking. But I just think we need to
Excuse me,
get beyond
can we speak through the chair, please?
Yes,
And
Chairman, sorry.
thank you, Councillor Riddle. Councillor Corbyn was next to speak.
Thank you. Thinking about areas where there's been CIL money where nothing else can be done in that area, then there has to be a provision to be able to apportion it elsewhere. So that needs to be put in the terms of reference for when the group is set up, because there will be areas where there's pockets of CIL money that's been forgotten that could be used effectively. So it's just to make sure that is a possibility.
I think we're starting to solutionise here, councillors. That is for the work of the working group to decide.
Councillor Hock.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm all for this, but also I just wanted to ask the Chief Exec, how long is that likely to be, the working group to form? But meanwhile, are we in a position that there are some CIL money which needs to be spent, i.e. by a few months or something like that? Then I will once I hear that, then I can answer the second.
So answering two questions there. After if this terms of reference is agreed by full council, I'll be speaking to the party leaders to ask who their nominations are. I'll be speaking to the 4 single member elected councillors as well, so we can get those nominations. We can then go as fast as our corporate colleagues and Louise Webber, who are head of communities, who will be leading this. We will come to an arrangement in terms of how quickly. The other working group, because toilets is very, very pressing, we've said should meet fortnightly. But again, it will be for the group to decide with officers and whomever that group decides is going to chair it as to the detail there. So I haven't been prescriptive. In terms of the second part of your question, which is councillors may or may not know that there is a 5-year window with which you have to spend community infrastructure levy fees. We have around about £21,000, which has to be spent by the 1st of April.
Next year.
So that is, yes, the 1st of April 2026. So for clarity, that's around about 2,500 to be spent by the 31st of December, and a further 18,500 to be spent by the 1st of April. If we aren't in a position to be able to do that, we can ensure that there is appropriate decision making which is put in place so that we don't return that money to developers, because that would be a huge loss. But that is the size of the very quick ticking challenge, if I use those words.
Thank you. Thank you. That makes sense. And I think what I'm going to say is, I hope the working group will be formed way below that time. If they don't, please spend that money on the toilets instead of giving it away.
Okay, can we have someone propose that we accept this? Councillor Nettle, seconded Councillor Hocking. Thank you very much.
Item 23. All those in favour? All those in favour, Chair?
Sorry, beg your pardon. All those in favour? I was assuming that was going to be okay. Silly me.
The other thing I might advise, Chair, is we are very close to 9:30. You may wish to ask members if they're happy to go beyond 9:30.
I won't repeat what Asa had just said. Is there anybody that objects to continuing?
Lovely.
Okay, thank you.
I have to ask, apologies.
Item 23, special delegation, Bemerton Heath pump track.
Hello, councillors. So the Bemerton Heath pump track works started today, actually. It did. The reason this paper is coming to you guys now is Wiltshire Council did a health and safety audit, which showed that an additional floodlight was needed on the site of where the pump track is going, because of the light that was coming from the Harlequins Football Club and also from our existing skate park, where there's a floodlight there. That hadn't been presented to councillors previously. And there was an additional cost to this council in terms of looking after that additional asset within the special delegation paper that I put together. I identified that we could assume those costs into our existing budgets, and there was no need to ask for additional funding or anything of that nature. With that in mind, I got Councillor Wells and Councillor Bayliss and Councillor Charleston to agree to signing that off, which allowed Wiltshire Council then to get on and agree for the works to start today. So it was to avoid, the reason it didn't come to this committee meeting today was to avoid any delay in the works starting.
Okay, are we happy to note that and move on to the next item? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 24, a motion, Cold Harbour Lane footpath. Councillor Taylor to present.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, fellow councillors. I've got a slide or two, if Andrew's got them to hand or somebody's got them to hand. I'll chat whilst you're finding the slides. One of the frustrations I've had as a junior councillor in the council here is not knowing the process. How do we do things? And kicking this one off a few months ago, I encountered criticism from colleagues and officers of getting things in the wrong order and not doing things right. And so the lesson I've learned is to go to the CEO and Janine and say, please, could we have a flow chart? Let's have a flow chart, because these little projects come up all the time. And trying to get the sequence of things is very difficult. How much money have we got? I don't know. How much money is it going to cost? I don't know. I need to get a rough order of magnitude cost from Mark. Mark's not going to give me that until we've got some support from the council. How do I get full support from the council? Because you don't know how much it's going to cost. And it goes on. Anyway, this initiative kicked off with a blind person in Ricky's ward. We'll have the next slide, please. Cold Harbour Lane, if you don't know where it is, it crosses Ashley Road, it connects the allotments to the rest of the world, and it runs past the river park. This blind gentleman said, I like walking down there. There's an entrance to the river park from Cold Harbour Lane. However, I have to walk in the middle of the road to get there. It's about 70 metres because the pavement runs out. Can we have the next slide? So that orange line, it looks a bit brown on this PowerPoint, but the orange line is basically what the proposal is. It's to put a footpath in alongside Cold Harbour Lane, connecting up the pavement-paved finishes with the entrance to River Park. And the next slide, please. So that's what it looks like. That's what the verge looks like at the minute. There's already an informal footpath there. This is City Council land. It's a City Council road. It's unadopted. So there's no money from Wiltshire Council for this. This is entirely our problem. Next slide. That's the view from the River Park looking across into Cold Harbour Lane. So that's what we're trying to do. You'll notice there's a couple of nice wooden bollards along there. They're quite expensive. There's also a street lamp that might need moving, and the electrics might need fiddling with. And it has to be wide enough for wheelchairs, mobility scooters, buggies, and so on. We talk about funding. This actually will be of benefit to other people other than just members of the Ward of St Paul's. Lots of people will access the River Park this way. Also, the school children getting to St Paul's School walk along this road as well. So if we can give them a safe pavement that pretty much connects with the school gate, it's all win-win. It's a safe thing. I think everybody's had a copy of the paper. I've sent it out to everybody. I've been talking with our city councillors from my ward and the adjacent wards. I'll just read out the motion and then we'll take any questions. Disabled residents of the city have expressed concern that accessing the new River Park entrance on Cold Harbour Lane cannot be achieved without routing along 70 metres of the council-owned roadway, which is considered potentially hazardous. This council believes that a paved footway suitable for use by those with disabilities and mobility issues should be laid alongside Dennis Marsh House, connecting the pavement of Kingsland Road to a drop curb opposite the entrance to River Park, as shown, which is basically to the rear of 9 Westminster Road. The resolution, this council instructs officers to obtain a detailed quote for the above works and approves the funding of the project up to an estimated value of 35k. Now, the advice I've had on where should the money come from is not my initiative, it's the advice I've had from officers from the RFO and the CEO is that this could be funded from SIL money. I know we're just going to talk about it, and it may well be that the working group decides against this kind of project, but I've been advised that that's the most appropriate source. So the resolution is with monies from the Community Infrastructure Levy, should insufficient funds be made available from SIL funds, the project will be included in the budget for 26-27. I urge all councillors to support this motion in the interest of the residents of the city, particularly the disabled and those with mobility issues. And could I have a recorded vote, please, Chair?
Thank you, Chris. That seems very clear to me. Is there anyone that has any questions they would like to ask? Councillor Hocking and Councillor Foster.
So firstly, I'd like to second the motion, please, if I may.
I can second it.
And the only other thing I'd quite like to say, so can we just pull a photograph up of the actual site, please? Next one. One with the actual bollards in it, the one that showed the, right, there we go. So, just for reference, and I was going to bring it up previously when we were talking about procurement. So, 35,000 quid divided by 70 metres is 500 quid a metre to put that path there. I'd like to tender for that, please, if I may, because I reckon I can give you a decent job for an awful lot less than that. That is a ridiculously large amount of money to pay for what is going to be a tarmac path, and I'll evidence that a bit. Yeah, it goes back to my old favourite, my block paved drive. I had a proper guy to do that, a professional bloke. He came and scraped out a ton of stuff with a digger, put it on a truck, took it away. Then he did all the right stuff with the aggregate and all the rest of it, sand on the top, block paved it perfectly. And that was 4 years ago, and I park my car on the same place every single day, and it's not sagged at all a millimetre. Great job. How much did that cost me? 120 quid a square metre. So we're looking at something here for a bit of tarmac, 5 times what I paid for some block paving. And I'd like to think that whatever we do in our procurement process, we make sure that we get this down to a sensible amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hocking. Any more questions or comments? Councillor Foster.
Yes, I think potentially I support the motion in the idea, but I'd like to put an amendment forward potentially. Weirdly, of what Councillor Hocking just said, even though he seconded it, because I similarly think £35,000 could be quite a lot, and therefore to approve that tonight before we have the detailed quote seems unnecessary. I'm just putting it out there. So potentially we could split this. The full council meets quite regularly, so if we get the detailed quote and then come back, and Sven may be happy that we come in at 10,000, but I don't think he would be happy if it was 35,000. So I'm confused from that myself, that he seconded it and then said 35,000 seemed a lot of money.
Councillor may come back. I'm not too worried about the figure that's in the motion because it's a number. But what I'm saying is when we go past that and we're asking someone to actually come up with a quote, we nail them down properly.
So my amendment would be the council instructs officers to obtain a detailed quote to bring back to full council, and then the rest is a potential for the future.
Can we just complete the questions that were raised before that amendment was proposed? Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, first of all, I just want to congratulate Councillor Taylor for being persistent. This was a plea from a person who's partially sighted, who uses this path quite frequently for a request that could we make it a bit safer for him and his carer when they travel down. It's a very narrow stretch, and you know it doesn't feel safe when you're walking on the road with a car passing you. This guy basically requested a sign, and we've now got this quite expensive project, which I felt was expensive. And I will say to Sven, you know, let's not have a downer on contractors. They have got to earn a living and earn a little bit of money. And remember, there'll be pedestrian management and traffic management, all the bollards and cones, which they make more money out of than they will for doing the work. But that does go hand in hand with this type of, this type of construction. I think what's persuaded me to support this, it is a large sum of money, is the fact that this was going to be one of the main entrances to a refurbished, hope it's going to be finished at some time, River Park project. You know, the meadows will be back open when everything starts to grow again. This would be a major route in. And I think that path just adds to the importance of having a safe route into that park. So I support it on that basis. And thank you, Chris, for being persistent.
Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Chair. I support this in principle. The one query I've got is that surely we've just voted to set up a working group about the dispersal of SIL monies, and we're already going to dispersing SIL monies. So aren't we putting the cart before the horse a little bit here? And a question for Councillor Hocking. Do you have an apprenticeship scheme?
Councillor Hock.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Foster, I agree with, because it should be, the number should be changed, because then I go back to the point where Councillor Rimmer made earlier on. If that in the public figure and domain, that figure is 35K, nobody's going to come in budget for any under. So I think that number needs to be changed for us to decide what we agree on. Because if we put 35, any contractor would not go below.
Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to second what Councillor Bayliss just said, is that we've just talked about SIL money, and there's one of the councillors from Harnham East trying to protect our SIL. That's about all as in the whole pot anyway for the whole city. So I don't see why in this motion would have any reference to where the budget would come from. I think we should just take that out and just, and proceed with part A. My amendment would be to take out reference to SIL or any other place.
Okay, we'll come back to the amendment in a moment. Councillor Riddle.
I would agree with taking out the reference to SIL. I think I don't disapprove of this scheme at all, and I think Councillor Taylor's done a good job to bring it to the need for it to our attention. But what's to stop another councillor next month coming in and saying, "Oh, well, we could have some silver, something that's in my ward that people think is very important." The whole point is that we're in the middle of setting up a procedure to make sure that our film money is distributed as fairly and reasonably as it can be. I don't think you should jump the gun with the way you're going to spend film money. If you want to have it in the budget as a normal budgeted piece of expenditure, I think that's a different thing. So I hope that you don't take this the wrong way, Councillor Taylor, but I just think we need to separate the two elements out: the desirability of doing this work, which I agree with, and I don't think we should all start making a grab for seal money now just because we think it's coming. I think we need to do this in a sensible, orderly fashion.
Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you. I mean, I support doing this, but can I just make a suggestion that instead of us putting endless different amendments onto it, why don't we, if we agree that this should go to the new SIL working group, why don't we vote against this motion, but with the understanding that the new working group can look at it, but with our full council's support that we think it's a good idea, but voting against this overall so that we're not approving it here and we're putting it to them, rather than otherwise we're going to have to vote on all the different amendments we've just had, etc. I'm also pleased to have somehow hit upon some kind of fault in sort of public sector contracting with these amounts put in them, so it's quite interesting.
Councillor Dalton.
Chair, thank you. It's refreshing to see motions from Conservative councillors, because we probably wouldn't have been able to bring one if you were running for council, so it's good to see them here as and when they come. I support this in the sense of what you're trying to fight for. Noting I've been that way for probably a couple of years, since just after the Environment Agency did the works around there. But I note the new road, should I say, that's been put in. On this, I would prefer what's been said by the past few councillors, that this is potentially, nothing to stop council instructs officers to obtain or to seek quotes for this work to be done and come back to the relevant committee in due course. But to commit to spending this up to this money, if there's any money within the St Paul's ward, which I assume this is, and then taking it from other, the other pot of money that we've got outside of that ward, I'd be more content if we instruct officers to obtain detailed quotes for the above works and then come back to the relevant committee and then refer it to the SIL working group. So probably for that reason, I can't support it. I agree with what you've got. I can't agree with the wording that you've put here, because I could come forward with probably tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of SIL money. Thinking off the top of my head, Parsonage Green to Harnham Community Sports Club wants resurfacing. It's a gravel track and some decent footpath from Lower Street onto the town path, which is completely open, where cars much more busier than this area would go past everybody.
Councillor Podger.
Thank you, Chair. I want to support this, and I'm quite happy to support it as it is. And from my understanding, the working group for the SIL will not be there to make any decisions. So this has been brought to us tonight. What I hear around the room is, I support it, I think it's a good idea. I think it will finish off or start, as Councillor Rogers put, the way to the River Park project. I think it's an easy win. I think it's a small amount of money considering the amount of SIL money. I'm not saying whether it's good value or cost of tarmac or goodness knows what. I'm just saying it's a relatively small amount of money. We hope it will be less than that. But it's an easy win, and it's been proposed now, and it's something we could get on and do, and it's something that's an easy win to give to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. It's now 20 to 10, and I know we all like spending time together because that's what we do. But actually, we have covered the SIL working group, and this is an estimated cost, so I think we just vote for it in its entirety because the costings will come back, it will be ironed out, and just get on with it.
Councillor Sam Charles.
Thank you, Chair. I guess there's a sort of slight sort of point of order, which is that not to drag the conversation further away from this motion, but I think if someone raises an amendment, you have to deal with it at the time it's raised.
Just going to come back to it.
Be that as it may, there's a lot of back and forth, SIL, not SIL. I'm not sure what the mood of the room is at this point, whether this is likely to go through or not. At the risk of sort of, one final amendment to rule them all, would it be, I'm happy to take your advice on this, Chris, would we be happy to move to something which said, get the report, get the detailed quote, and consider it for inclusion in the budget next year?
Okay.
Is that a way forward that we can work together, Chris? That we can take that forward? It's a genuine question. Otherwise, happy to take this motion as it is. I support it generally. My thoughts. So.
Thank you. As I can see, this has a lot of support. The only question mark is over the funding process, and we have an amendment that was put forward before. Could we hear that amendment?
Apologies, Chair. I think
Councillor Taylor. Sorry, Councillor
may
Taylor.
or may not be a sensible.
Sorry, I know the pubs are open and they close soon. Forgive me for commenting at all. The comments have been a good example of why we need this flowchart, really. So when it comes to the costings, we had to get a rough order of magnitude cost. Mark Reed had to get some support from councillors to put the time in to get that rough order of magnitude cost. It is that. It is the worst case. Not surprisingly, when I saw 35k and spoke to Ricky, I spoke to Sven, guess what? They said, gosh, that's a lot of money. We could do it for a tenth of that. I'm sure they could. If you want to talk to Mark Reed, his answer is fine. It is worst case. There will be a detailed quote. We all know a detailed quote will come back to us before it's finally approved. 35k is the worst case for us to consider from a budgetary point of view. When it comes to the wording was discussed at length with the CEO and the RFO, and I sought their guidance on how we were going to do this. And obviously, Councillor Charleston and I had a conversation about it, and we've discussed it again before the meeting tonight. Again, there doesn't seem to be a straightforward way of putting the wording in. But if you read the wording again, what I'm saying is, I've been advised there's plenty of money in the SIL pot, and the most obvious source of funding has been advised to me as SIL money. However, I've already said in this resolution, if there is no SIL money available, i.e. somebody tells me we can't have SIL money for this, then I will be asking the administration to include it in next year's budget. So we're basically saying, let's get on with it. If the SIL money comes good, great. If it doesn't, I shall look to the administration to include it in next year's budget. But I think if we think the path is a good idea, then we should be saying yes, because unless we say yes tonight, Mark can't go and get the detailed quotes. He needs to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Can we just come back to Councillor Foster with regard to...
Just wanted to clarify, because I think it's my amendment here. I think Chris just said exactly what I've been asking for in my amendment, which is let's go away and get the detailed quote and then bring it back to us, because, and whether it's through my contract work, through my job, what he has just said is not what is written on this paper. What is written on this paper, if we approve it as this, the council will never see this again. The money will be spent through SIL, and then if not through SIL, it has to be put in next year's budget if we approve what is written here. My amendment would be to say we give power to go and get the detailed quote. We are in favour of the motion, but there is a question around where the funding comes from, and rather than handcuff ourselves to something.
Can you just frame that in a very simple proposal
Yes,
so that we can record
this
that and
council
vote
instructs
on it?
officers to obtain a detailed quote to bring back to whether full council or the relevant committee.
Okay,
And
we'll
that's
vote
what
on.
we
Have we got a
approved.
seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hott. Okay, can we vote on that amendment, please?
Excuse me. I believe the original motion was seconded, so you do need to vote on that first before you then, and then if that's not carried, then you can consider the amendment.
Okay. So we're voting on the motion as it stands initially. All those in favour?
Point of order. I don't think that's right.
So whose advice am I taking?
Wait one caller, give me 30 seconds. Let me just have a quick conversation with my head of corporate.
I think Councillor Dalton is correct because Councillor Dalton is correct because if the motion fails, there is no amendment.
I understand. Yeah.
I think we need to vote on the amendments first.
Okay. Coming back to what was said originally, the advice I've received, this is the third set of advice, is that we vote on the amendment before we vote on the motion. So can we have a vote on the amendment? Could you please repeat it, Councillor Foster? Just remind us. Okay, can we have a seconder for that? Councillor Brown. Councillor.
Proposer whether he's happy to accept the amendment, because if he is, then that's the end of the process. Otherwise, if this fails at this stage, we've got to vote again and it goes on. If Councillor Taylor's prepared to accept this, there's just one vote.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think it. I thought the original motion was reasonably clear. We would get detailed quotes. That would have been the next step. I think the resolution was reasonably clear in that we've said, still monies if available, if not, other funding. So I don't think this amendment is necessary. You and I have talked about this motion at length, and I think the wording is fine. However, I don't have a problem with the wording. I think what we need to ensure is that what we're voting on now then is we're voting on supporting this footpath in principle. So that needs to be, with the wording needs to say we support the idea of a footpath and we will consider the detailed quotes at the next full council meeting, something like that. Something like that.
So apologies to be a pain at this point. Are we accepting the amendment, the amended motion or not? Excellent. Right.
Okay.
Apologies. Can we then vote on the amendment? Sorry, on the motion. The amended motion is now substantive.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, sorry. Councillor Taylor did ask for a recorded vote.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Leader. Councillor Taylor did ask for a recorded vote.
I think it was unanimous, which may well answer that, but...
Apparently the votes were counted.
Okay. Councillor Taylor, just to confirm that Andy has recorded down everyone's vote.
Item 27, proposed mayoral visit. Oh, sorry. Wishful thinking. Okay.
To remind you, we have a member of the public.
Yeah. Okay, motion 25 is a motion on central car park toilets. And I would like at this stage to point out we have a member of the public who has sat here and waited and waited. He had a question, so I think we must give him first go at this. Let's have your question, please, sir. And I'm really sorry you've had to sit through all of this. Almost as sorry as I am. Simon.
Chair, I'd just like to firstly thank the council for having me here this evening. With the toilets in the central car park, it's a good idea. We've had lots of issues this evening where people have actually said different things about it. As someone who used to have a relative who was in a wheelchair, the toilets over at the bus station and are difficult for a wheelchair access even now. Is there any way we can, I know Chris has put a motion forward to reopen them, and thank you for that. Is there any way that will go ahead?
Thank you for your question, and I believe that is the very issue that we're going to be discussing in a moment, and you're welcome to stay and engage in that debate should you wish to.
Thank you.
Councillor Charleston.
Can I respond to the question, or is it part of this?
You may respond to the question, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming. Thank you for waiting. I think it's worth making clear that we offered to bring this forward for you, and I'm grateful that you stayed. But anyway, I think, as I said in the administration leader's announcements right at the start, we have made some very significant progress, more or less agreed, with some ironing out of the details, that we will be taking back control, taking back the toilet building on an asset transfer from Wiltshire Council. So at that point, it'll come back into the City Council's ownership, and we'll be able to reopen the toilets. That will be something that is within our power. Yeah, we are back in a position where, yes, that is very much.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just a point of information. So we are, as the leader has said, we are negotiating at the moment. My understanding is it is the ambition of the administration to do so. We would need to bring a paper back to this council for agreement. That paper would include a full business case, which sets out the maintenance costs, the ongoing life cycle costs, etc., so that we can be very clear with our elected representatives the amount of money that we're talking about here. Again, we've heard this evening a number of cases where there has been a lack of clarity around finances. I am sure that Mr. Mark Reed, who is still sat in the room after starting work this morning before 8 o'clock, will indeed be bringing back very detailed reports once negotiations and proposals have been finalised. But I am clear that the administration are very keen to do this. That decision would need to be taken by full council.
Councillor Rimmer?
Can I just make a request that when that happens, could we have if it's not immediately before a full council, could we have an extraordinary full council just to vote on that? Because I think the general public are extremely keen that we sort this out. So any amount of waiting that's unnecessary isn't great. So if it's not just before a full council, if we could have extraordinary full council to approve it, that would be much appreciated, I think.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch all of that. I'm not quite clear what the statement was.
I was saying that it needs approval by full council, and it will come back to full council, was what was just said. And I don't think we should have to wait for a programmed full council in order to do that. If this happens not before one, can we please have an extraordinary full council to vote on it?
Asa, could you like to comment on
So,
that?
for members to be aware, we have the next full council will be in November. The next full council after that will be early January. The next full council after that will be March. There is a steady programme. It depends, councillor, forgive me for playing in semantics, what you mean by an appropriate length of time, undue delay. If we're talking about a week or two, then that would fit in with the programme quite nicely. If you're talking about having to call a full council because it's more than 7 days away, is that does that meet your expectations? We have 3 full councils between now and the end of the year.
Sure, that makes sense. But if we could push to have it as soon as possible, is what I'm trying to say, really.
Councillor Corbyn.
Sorry, I've got a couple of questions and it's probably for Mark. Has anybody actually been in that property and assessed it so far to see whether it would be usable immediately, whether it would need work to get it up to standard, whether there are any changes?
So nobody from Salisbury City Council has set foot inside those toilets since they were handed back to Wiltshire Council. Obviously, it would be over to the council to decide of what state the toilets. So yes, they could be reopened in their current state, but it depends on the standard that this council would like to reopen the toilets at. So we've been through a refurbishment process for a number of our toilet blocks. Maybe this is one if it is coming back over to the city council, that a plan would it would be useful to have a plan of what we want to use that building for, what the best way to maximise that asset.
Could I suggest then that during the negotiation process that's going on, that an assessment visit is done so that you can have an idea, because obviously Councillor Rimmer is keen to have a extraordinary meeting, which I don't believe is necessary because, as Asa's alluded to, we've got quite a few meetings coming up. So if you do the assessment between now and fairly swiftly, then you'll have an idea of where you are with it.
Yeah. So as I said, I think the block has been mothballed by Wiltshire Council. So there's nothing. It's still in the same state as what it was in when we handed it back. It's not been that a great length of time. So it's going to be in a very similar condition to what we handed it over at. The key thing I think for council is going to have to consider is, even if we get given this within, say, the next 3, 4, 5 months, there's no budget allocated for cleaning it, maintaining it, etc. So that's where that full business case is going to be really important for council to be able to make a sensible decision and making sure that there is a budget in place for whatever council decides it wants to do with that block.
And my third point is, in the negotiation that's going on, is there going to be a request for Wiltshire Council to provide money to get it going for the first 6 months or something to help tide us over?
Mr. Mayor, if I can, I think if we were to ask for that, the deal may be dead. It is not something that Wiltshire Council would entertain.
Okay, we need to actually vote on this motion from Chris Taylor.
That's the first time I had all the questions before the motion, I think, in the 10 months or so I've been doing this. Thank you. Just a few things I wanted to mention in passing. Obviously, Councillor Charleston's already mentioned a few things, and the question and answer session we've just had has mentioned a few things. Thank you to Simon for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for your petition. I think that put a lot of weight behind people like me trying to argue for the case for these toilets. I've been banging on about these toilets for months and months and months, every full council meeting. At the last full council meeting we had, I raised the topic again, and a number of people around the table said discussions were occurring with Wiltshire Council. That may or may not have been the case at a political level. At officer level, it wasn't occurring at all. And when I started digging and talking to Asa and then the officers at Wiltshire Council, there was no negotiation or discussion. And more alarming Wiltshire Council had decided we were no longer interested in the building and had handed it to Middleton and Major to market it to pass on to a third party, which struck me as completely bonkers. I'm grateful to Ian Thorne. I wrote him a letter. He got involved. That led to the meeting that we all had a few days ago now, wasn't it? Just last week, really. And with the timing of that in mind, I wanted to get this motion here tonight so that if that meeting went well, which it did, then we can discuss this motion, which we pretty much discussed anyway, but at least we can vote on it. So it was a bit of a perilous time, really, but I'm grateful to Wiltshire Council officers, Asa and Mark Reed. Bear in mind, the only mandate our officers have right now is to close those toilets. Full council has repeatedly said, keep the toilets closed. So right now, Asa and Mark have a mandate to keep the toilets closed. That's why tonight we need to give them a mandate to negotiate with a view to reopening if everything works well. And as you've heard already, the meeting went well. Wiltshire Council wanted to give us a lease. Asa and Mark wanted an asset transfer. Inevitably, there needed to be a clawback. The problem is that building is in the middle of the maltings. In the fullness of time, Wiltshire Council might want to redevelop it, but they agreed the lead time for doing that development would be years and years and years. So we could have a clawback clause with lots and lots of notice. So we'll have security.
We've got a couple of questions here. First of all, from Councillor Dalton.
Chair, yeah, thank you. Yes, I like the motion. You weren't the only councillor that was badgering on about toilets being closed, because I was one of those, particularly here and the Market Square. So I was lobbying about both sets of toilets. And I can assure you on the Saturday after the election, when I met with Ian Thorne, I raised this very subject with him about either asset transfer or whatever to get these loos back open. And I know that meeting took place recently, Chris, because you just mentioned that you were with Ian Thorne when that took place. So, and I know Paul Samples raised this very issue as well. So both he and I were badgering Ian Thorne behind the scenes at a political level before the officers obviously were asked by the leader of this council, I think, to get involved in that. And obviously that leader, I don't want to speak his words, but if he's giving a direction to the officers at a leadership level, then obviously that's where the direction that we are now going. I think the wording, I don't know if I can amend it, but I've got some slightly different wording down in note of the recent events of the meeting that took place and obviously the discussions that have taken place since May the 3rd or whenever it was. And those, I mean, I can be shot down in flames. I'm quite content with that. And you may laugh at the very last word that I've got at the end here. But so this council notes the discussions that the leader of the council and officers have had with the leader of Wiltshire Council about an asset transfer or similar, and look forward to the City Council reopening these toilets at the earliest convenience. I don't know if that's, I've written that down before. I don't know if it negates this. I think it's better worded than that. I think that may.
Can we come back to that in a moment? We've got a couple of people that still want to speak on the subject. Councillor Nettle.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't get a chance. So let me read it out. I think it says what we need. This motion has been batting between me and the CEO now for every day, wasn't it, Asa? Every day. He's fed up with me with that, like a bat phone in his room with bloody Chris Taylor phoning him up again. Anyway, now there is clarity that the toilet working group will not discuss the status of the central car park toilets. And we know that because of what we just talked about. This council believes that the recent closure of the central car park toilets should be reversed. Given that, Salisbury City Council's financial situation is better than was presented to councillors in January 25, and that the council's general reserves are much improved following recent savings measures. Public opinion, and thanks to Simon for this, public opinion has been strongly opposed to closing this toilet block, given its convenient location near the car park. The central car park toilets include a disabled toilet, baby changing facilities, and have a nearby blue badge parking, which the alternatives do not. The toilet building is the first building seen by many visitors and tourists who arrive by car and has been recently decorated with high-quality murals. Opening the central car park toilets is an affordable measure which will offload or reduce the usage of other city centre toilets. So the resolution is this council instructs officers to continue in negotiations with Wiltshire Council to acquire the freehold or similar arrangement, i.e. the clawback, of central car park toilets on acceptable terms and resolves to reopen them. I urge all councillors to support this motion in the interest of all the residents of our city and visitors. So I think that covers it.
We still have questions from Jeremy Nettle. No, my hand was to second the motion. I'm also going to say that it's very disappointing that, given that Christmas is just around the corner, that it's unlikely, from what I've heard, that these toilets will be open for Christmas, when visitors, a large number of visitors, will be coming to Salisbury. So I would urge any discussions to be very focused on, if possible, and given us funding in the budget that we heard earlier, to get these toilets open as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Podger.
I was just going to second the motion.
And Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chairman. I just hope Chris would accept a word put into the resolution, and that is this council instructs members and officers. And I'll tell you why. Previously, we had no movement on this. Whether we like it or not, we had a change of administration at Wiltshire Council, which happened because Chairman and I supported the Lib Room Dem administration on the basis that one of our wish lists was the reopening of the central car park toilets. As all things, it drifts on and on and on and on. And a few months ago, we had to remind the leader of Wiltshire Council, if you want our continued support, get on and open the central car park toilets. You own them, get on and open them. It has since moved on to, let's try and transfer the freehold. I just want them opened. I think the reality is now, if we can, this is going to need members to make this happen. It's going to need political pressure to turn this into reality. I think we ought to, so if you would accept that simple wording, let's continue this pressure, let's get a deal. I think all is we need to know is we need a condition survey, which shouldn't take too long. It's only a small building. We need to go the ongoing maintenance costs and the ongoing running costs. That could be delegated to the leader of the two authorities to sort out. Let's get on with this and do it.
I'm happy to accept that amendment.
Three people still with questions. Councillor River.
Thank you. Happy to. I support the motion and I support the amendment to it. It makes sense. I really didn't want to have any kind of political argument about this whole thing, but I'm afraid if members of the former administration are trying to it does feel like we're sort of rewriting history here because it was a political decision.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think we need to discuss that at this stage. I think we need to get a decision on this motion. I think that's the important thing we need to move to.
Well, with respect, there was discussion about this already, so I'm coming back on the discussion that was already had. I.e., Councillor Dalton was talking about was talking about lobbying to keep them open, and my point is that the former administration's policy was to close them. It was a political decision to close them. In January, they were offered options for how to not close them, and they decided to do that. And I think it needs to be on the record that that was a political decision. It wasn't a fait accompli. There were other options that were rejected.
Thank you. Your comments are noted. Councillor Sam Charleston.
No, I withdraw mine.
And Councillor Hock.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Rogers put it very succinctly and very nicely. But I think I also echo what Councillor Dalton is saying. We should put credit where it's due. I think current leader of Wiltshire Council had the courage to say that if they wanted freehold, they get freehold. And that is a big step. And I think credit should be added within the writing, because if that was the previous leader, Richard Clure, he would have said no. I assure you. So I think credit is where it's due. So I think our leader's name should be mentioned, as Councillor Dalton rightly said.
Okay, can we move to a decision on the motion now?
So, Mr. Mayor, I believe that we have an amendment which is suggested by Councillor Rogers that we should take first. That amendment has been accepted by Councillor Taylor, and therefore the revised resolution would now read, this council instructs members and officers to continue negotiations with Wiltshire Council to acquire the freehold or similar arrangement of central car park toilets on acceptable terms and resolves to reopen them. Was there a seconder for Councillor Rogers, Councillor Podger? In which case I believe that there is now a vote on that.
Right, all those in favour? Carried, thank you. Right, hopefully the last item, 26, will be a very brief one. Proposed mayoral voice.
I'm happy to cover this one off, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of Beth George, one of our corporate support officers, apologies, Beth couldn't be here this evening. You accepted the amendment. We voted on the amendment. That was carried.
Yes.
So that was proposed by Rogers and seconded by Podger.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, last agenda item, councillors. We have a report from Beth George, one of our corporate support officers, who very clearly points out that any overseas travel should be approved by committee for the mayor. And therefore, we have brought this very short report to full council as the next available committee to us, so that we could give the good people of St. Gertrude the appropriate information. At the moment, there are no anticipated costs to the City Council in the mayor attending. There is the detail in front of you for councillors to agree or otherwise, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hock.
Thank you, Chair. I support the motion, and I'd like to move the motion as well.
Councillor Hock. Okay. Very quickly, before we, sorry, Councillor Brown. Okay. Before we move to a vote, I did want to point out a couple of things, which is actually sort of breaking news. I was in discussion with the Mayor of Christchurch today, and the Mayor of Christchurch informs me that as a consequence of leaving the EU, we are no longer able to apply directly for funding for twinning associations. However, Christchurch, and I have this on good authority, and their officers will contact our officers, that if you are twinned with 2 or more European cities, you are entitled, or we are entitled, as a UK city, to receive EU funding for our twinning association. So I know it's not an issue for this particular motion, because this, and I'll explain why I brought this to the committee, is that as mayor, I'm responsible, I think, for maintaining and establishing good links in Europe. I was given a personal invitation by the mayor of Nivelles when I went to the Twinning Association meeting in Sant, because they are twinned with Sant, although they're not twinned with us. The offer was sent to me directly following a personal invitation. My feeling is that I would want to go on this, not because we are necessarily going to twin with that organisation, but it was a very, they're extending the hand of friendship and welcoming, and I think that I was prepared to meet the costs of travelling in order to keep the door open should we wish to negotiate with them in the future, rather than turn down their generous offer to accommodate me and the mayoress for a weekend and, if you like, give them the opportunity to build links. Councillor Hock. Okay. Councillor
Right,
Bates.
thanks. I just wanted to check that it is a return ticket. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm booked in for a return on the next council meeting. No. Councillor Hocking.
I'm fully in support of this, but I'd like to chuck a bit more in as well, actually. I mean, those of us who have been the mayors, you're going through it now, I've been through it, Atticus has been through it. When we are entertained in our twin cities, we get the red carpet treatment. Yeah? When they come to visit us, we give them nothing. So they pay for the hotel, they pay for the transport, Christ, they even pay for their bloody meals in the pub. Yeah? Unless some of us step in our own pocket and help out. So the Belgians have made a request to our mayor to come and have a visit and have a chat. He's accepted. John is going to Belgium as the mayor of our city. I believe the host have kindly arranged his accommodation, but as he's going on our behalf, I think we should pay for his train ticket. Yeah, I don't see why John should have to fork out his own money to do that. They've made a request formally to us. He's accepted. We should pay for him to go. It's a couple of Eurostar tickets. Is that right, John?
Sorry?
Is it a couple of Eurostar tickets? I think you said, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So the least we could do is stump up for the mayor and mayoress to the cost of transport for their mayoral visit. I think that's the least we could do.
I
Councillor Hock.
wholeheartedly support and exactly what Sven has said. Look, honestly, as a mayor, I did say that when I was the mayor as well. What Santa has done for us, it really put us to a shame. I'm sorry to say. We are absolutely nowhere 1% near what they have done for us. And that's why when I was the mayor, I had to repay my thanks by when the royal family was here, I invited them personally and they came. So I think it's absolutely right. Look, all of us being a mayor, or in the future, some of us has due to 1 term, 2, 3 terms, we deserve this. And a small amount like that, I think we should pay out, and the mayor deserves to have that from us. So I would certainly happy to pay for that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Podger.
I won't be supporting this, I'm afraid. And I don't think our residents would want us to support this. And as for mayors deserving something, I really don't know what all that's about. I don't think it's a good spend of money. And whilst Councillor Wells has said he will pay, that would be unacceptable anyway, because it would set a precedence. Because for sure, if I was to be the next mayor, I could not afford to pay for my trips out. I don't think the residents would appreciate us voting for this. I don't think it's necessary. And if we have no plans to twin with them, which I don't believe we do, I don't see the reason for the trip.
Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. That's kind of astonishing, because our civic heritage and what we stand for and what we do and the history is important. The connections we make with outside sources. It could be that John goes and he interacts with a language school that then says, oh, actually, I haven't been there for a while because of Novichok, COVID, whatever. Let's go back. How is it now? And so our city actually does benefit from these interactions. And for the small amount of the tickets or whatever, or if John's prepared to pay for it himself, who are we to tell him how to live his mayoral year? We shouldn't. None of the rest of us were dictated to. And actually, I do not believe that any of our residents are that bothered about what the mayor does. They love it when they see the mayor and whatever, and as long as they are representing the city in a positive light, that is all the residents care about. And it is a very small amount, and we do only get a very paltry allowance for being councillors. So it's not that we're quaffing huge amounts or anything else.
Chairman, the
Thank
motion
you.
has been put in, so we just need to vote.
Hang on.
Just need to vote.
Can I just
Councillor
come
Hott.
back with something?
Councillor Hott, could you please repeat that?
The motion has been put forward, it has been seconded. Let's go for the vote.
Just the final word from me. A couple of things which have arisen recently. I was stopped by somebody from Wiltshire Creative who communicated to me that the visit of the mayor from Salisbury, North Carolina, has contacted Wiltshire Creative with a view to establishing a cultural link which could lead to mutual performances across the city. My wife, when we went to Sant on one of the tours, met a French representative from the Twinning Association, and she is now in negotiations with her to set up a visit of 20 students from Sant the following year. So if you put the effort in to build links with other communities, you do get an outcome. And the point about the funding, I'm absolutely certain the funding that we're concerned about with regard to entertaining people from mayors from other twinned cities and towns, I believe that the funding that we could receive from the EU as a consequence of twinning with more than two cities would more than cover the costs of providing that level of hospitality, which I, had the privilege to receive from those particular towns and cities. So I'd support it, but I think I won't vote on this one. I think I'll just abstain. But can we move to a vote on? Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, Chair, I did put my hand up quite a while ago, and I am an old mayor, although not the oldest, because Ricky's still here, so I can't see him. But he outdates me considerably, and so does Jeremy by 5 or 6 years. Now, I'll probably go into how it used to be run. Across the road is the old chemist, isn't it, Higgins, which used to generate around about £47,000 a year in rent. And that was owned by the then charter trustees, which used to fund the mayor's office, if you like. It wasn't called that in times back. And part of that was the clerk to the charter trustees, good old Frank, bless him, and Barry as well. And I remember that his last salary was 12 grand a year, which is paltry, really. But if you look at it now compared to what it was then. But over the years, I've raised this with ASA in the past, I think this council almost needs a delegated mayor's committee. I don't know how you'd call it or how you delegate it. Obviously made up of the current mayor and potentially past mayors sat on it. There are tensions high. Over the years that I've been around, there's councillors that hate mayor's office. They'll never be mayor for whatever reason. And there's those councillors that love it. Very nervous at the beginning, as I was, but as you get into it over the year, you really enjoy it and burst into tears, as I did when I had to hand the chain back. I don't know if that was with relief or I didn't want to hand it back. I think this is quite an embarrassing item, should I say. I don't think the mayor to have to pay out of his own pocket. And I've heard horror stories of past mayors after me not even being able to claim for a new suit, for argument's sake, when a royal visit. Now that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't be out of pocket. If you've got, I had 5 royal visits when I was mayor, actually, 2010 to 2011. And if the mayor doesn't have a decent dinner jacket or suit, they should be claiming for that. And in this instance, how the twinning started for Zant and Jeremy, or Ricky may know better than I, started off Zantin or Sant, I've no idea. And I know Margot Jackson was deeply involved with the Sant twinning. I think she came to us on the district council back in '95 when the Lib Dems took over then, because she wasn't getting the support from whoever it was on the Sant twinning. Potentially a way forward as a mayor's committee, I don't know. I'm chucking that out. I don't even think we reward past mayors like we used to. The blue tie's gone out the window, and I was horrified when they were just issued to Tom, Dick and Harry, should I say. But John, fully support this. Yes, don't vote on it. I will. I don't think you should be out of pocket. No mayor should be out of pocket whatsoever. It builds closer ties. all your anti-European stuff aside, please. If it builds closer ties and brings money to the city, that's got to be good for everybody.
Thank you. Can we vote on this now, please, and then we can close? All those in favour of supporting this? Thank you. Any against? One against. Right.
One thing which I've noticed today, actually, which needs to be brought to everybody's attention is coffee. It's come to my attention that officers and staff are sneaking decaf coffee sachets only into the coffee machines. Into the, instant coffee pots. And also that the coffee out there as we come in, this stuff, is also decaffeinated. Now, decaffeinated coffee is about the same as alcohol-free beer. Utterly pointless. Yeah, so I'd like a request, please. I'd like real coffee brought back.